call the regular meeting of the Lake Charles Harbor and Terminal District for March 28th to order. If everyone would please rise. Dear Lord, we ask your blessing on this board, this port, the people whose livelihood depends upon it. We ask that you guide this board tonight in our decisions, that they are for the good of those we serve. Amen.
Amen.
Mr. Garbone will lead us in the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The board encourages public comments and questions regarding all agenda items. Persons wishing to do so should complete a speaker's card, which is at the entrance of the boardroom. When speaking or asking a question on an agenda item, one should, in addition to completing the card, come to the microphone, be recognized, provide your name, address, and phone number. Comments by individuals will be limited to 3 minutes. First item is the minutes approval of the February 21-22 regular meeting minutes and the March 16th, 2022 special meeting minutes. I have a motion.
I make a motion to approve. A second.
Mr. Darbone moves. Mr. Guidry second. Any discussion? No discussion. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Motion carried. Submission 2022-09. Mr. Self.
Yes, staff requests the Board of Commissioners to authorize the district to enter into a cooperative endeavor agreement with the Calcasieu Parish Communications District, E911, for aerial photography. The Calcasieu Parish Police Jury, through the Communications District, has taken the lead, and they fly through our parish taking pictures, aerial photos, and provide that to those that are participating in the cooperative endeavor agreement. We've done this in the past with the Calcasieu Parish Police Jury. Our portion of the cost is at $50,000. They fly the whole channel. We use these for marketing purposes and for other reasons. It allows us to drill down all the way down to the parcel level. If I'm did that correct, Nick? As I recall, we're able to drill down, click on different parcels of land, and see the ownership. We use it for anywhere from marketing to for whatever purposes we may need. The last time we did it was in 2019, and we did budget for this for 2022.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we accept, we approve submission 2022-009.
Okay, Mr. McCleary moves.
I second.
Mr. Lorenzi second. Any discussion? No discussion. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Motion carried. Submission 2022-010. Mr. Self.
Staff requests the Board of Commissioners to authorize the Executive Director to accept the lowest responsive bid from Alpha Prama LLC for the front gate laydown yard at City Docks and amend the 2022 capital budget. As you will recall, Hurricane Laura decimated a lot of the port facilities. In an effort to resolve some of these issues, we've been talking about having tension fabric buildings constructed on some of the port property. It's a relatively lower capital cost than some of the more permanent structures, even though the one that we're proposing here has a 20-year useful life. In the 2022 budget, we budgeted $3 million for a laydown yard at City Docks. That is what you're seeing on your submission for the base bid. The additional part, which is alternate 1, is for the tension fabric building. It's a 40,000 square foot tension fabric building that will meet today's winds code. It's somewhere between 130 or 134 miles per hour. 40,000 square foot tension fabric building as you enter City Docks off to the right. And it fills a gap for us because we're obviously in badly need of additional storage space, covered storage space.
I make a motion to approve submission 2022-011.
Mr. Darbone moves.
I'll second that.
Mr. Dixon second. Any discussion? I have one question, Nick. Why is the contingency so high on this project?
Oh, yes, sir, that
I
was
mean,
just to,
that's a 800,000 contingency, basically on 1.4 million of additional expenditure, right?
yes, sir. And that was just to accommodate in case we ran into some unexpected soil conditions. We had borings that were nearby. They're just outside of the footprint of where the foundations are going to go. So that was really the only reason, was just in case we experienced some unexpected bad soil conditions.
It's about a 50% contingency, huh?
Well,
Against the 1.4.
Yeah, we were basing it, well, it's against the 2.4,
Okay.
but we were really looking at it as an overall project.
Any other questions? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Ayes have it, motion carried. Submission 2022-011.
Staff requests the Board of Commissioners to authorize the Executive Director to approve a change order to the contract with Keeling Construction for the removal of asbestos in Shed 7 in the building and roof, Port Project CP 21011. This work will be performed in accordance with plans and specifications prepared by the Engineering Department under Port Project CP 21011. In October of 2021, the Port awarded a contract to Keeling Construction for the demolition of Transit Shed 7. At that point, there was no obvious asbestos sources that we were seeing at that point. However, after a more detailed inspection, traces of asbestos were found in the caulking, in the walls, in the ceiling, and then the sealant on the walls and on the original roof, not the ceiling. The Port has hired Booth Environmental as our contractor. Nick can discuss the plan further, but we're asking for a change order in the amount of $200,000 to the original contract.
Is $200,000 going to be able to cover all of that? Asbestos is such a game now, so.
Yes, sir, that's the goal, is for
Yeah.
200,000 to cover it. We tried to quantify it, but because of the unknowns and the hidden nature of the asbestos, this was, we're basing it on unit rates and an estimated quantity. So it is very possible that we go over that, but we're gonna have our consultants there to monitor as they're removing the asbestos to try to keep that in check. We'll have our consultants plus, as well as the Port staff will be there monitoring, but we're pretty confident that this will accommodate all the asbestos.
You can always come back with a change order to the change order. Okay.
I'll definitely come back to you if
Okay.
that happens, but I don't expect it to.
All right.
Can I get a motion to?
I'll make a motion.
Ms. Dixon
second.
moves submission 2022-011. Mr. Lorenzi, second. Any other discussion? No other discussion. All in favor, aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Ayes have it, motion carried. Submission 2022-012. Mr. Self.
Staff requests the Board of Commissioners to accept the lowest responsive bid from State Machinery and Equipment Sales, LLC, for the procurement of a new Hyundai HL 980A wheel loader for Bulk Terminal 1. This piece of equipment is used primarily in the loading, well, actually primarily, it's used for a lot of reasons. It's used in the loading of pet coke for trucks. It's used in the unloading of pet coke that we receive by truck. It's used in loading pet coke when we bring it to the dock. It's used in the unloading of barite when we unload it from the ship. So it's got multiple uses. In February, Nick issued bids for the front-end loader. We received 4. State Machinery and Equipment was the lowest at an estimated cost of $348,320. We're currently renting one, and purchasing this other will allow us to more easily maintain our other front-end loaders.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we accept submission 2022-012.
Second.
Ms. McClary moves, Mr. Guidry second. Any discussion? questions? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Motion carried. Submission 2022-013.
Staff requests the Board of Commissioners to authorize the purchase of a new Caterpillar D3 from Louisiana Machinery from the state contract for bulk terminal number 1 operations. The D3 is a relatively small dozer, and it's picked up and put in the hold of the ship when we're unloading a bulk vessel, and it's so that it can move the bulk product to the center, so that the can grab hold of the product rather than it being dispersed throughout the hold of the ship. The dozer is replacing an aging dozer that is beyond its useful life. It also includes a 5-year warranty at an estimated cost of $241,092 is from state contract. And I think during some of the briefings we had, the last time we acquired one was in 2020, and the cost was $186,000 in 2020. Since that time, and Nick pointed this out to me a while ago, the cost has escalated and the state contract discount has decreased. So we got, I guess, hit from both sides, cost increase and a lower discount from the state for state contract.
Okay.
I make a motion to approve submission 2022-013.
Mr. Darbone moves.
Second.
Mr. Dixon, second. Any questions? Nick, you handled this one too?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I think I'd ask Ricky, and I don't know if you found out, but I had a question regarding the disposal of the one that's being replaced. What happens with that in the process since it's not a trade deal, it's an outright purchase?
Yes, sir. Typically, anything that is no longer useful to the port, we have to put up for public auction. This dozer in particular, though, we have other similar dozers that are the same model, so we're going to actually use it for spare parts for those until those are no longer used in their useful life. So we're going to salvage as many parts as we can off of it, and then we'll have to just sell the rest of it for salvage, essentially. That's a process we have to go through, that for everything that's beyond its useful life, we have to put up for public auction.
Right, and that's what I was wondering, if the one that was purchased a few years ago that's being replaced was going to be disposed of, and there'd be some proceeds coming back from that.
Yes, sir, but
From what I'm hearing, you're not doing it right now.
No, sir, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Ayes have it, motion carried. Submission 2022-014, Mr. Self.
And board approval is sought authorizing the executive director to enter into a lease agreement with Seabolt Marine for the installation of a modular office space at City Docks. Prior to Hurricane Laura, their office space was located at the Industrial Canal. They were leasing space at what we call the BG Warehouse. It was badly damaged by Hurricane Laura. Since that time, they have been, for the most part, working from home, and they want, they reached out to the port and asked for really just a footprint, a piece of land for them to go out and acquire or lease a modular building to place on that land, and they'll lease that space from us. John drafted the lease similar to other leases. We've done this before for some of the other tenants, and the terms of this agreement are very similar to that. It's a 5-year term.
Mr. President, I would recommend approval of submission 2022-014, authorizing the ground lease with Seabolt.
Okay, Mr. Lorenzi moves. Acceptance. Fact. Oh, sorry.
I'll second
Miss-
his motion.
Ms. McClary, second. Any discussion? No discussion. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Motion carried. Submission 2022-015.
A board approval is sought authorizing the executive director to enter into an amendment to the long-term lease with Driftwood LNG LLC, a subsidiary of Tellurian Investments LLC. In July of 2021, The port entered into a long-term agreement with Driftwood LNG for their site for the development of an LNG export terminal. The lease at that point did not contemplate a limited notice to proceed. It just assumed that at some point they would issue, once they made their final investment decision, they would enter into their full notice to proceed. The limited notice to proceed allows them to go in and do some work, such as demolish the building that's on site that needs to be torn down, remove a pipe rack that's about a mile long, and do some foundational work. Associated with that, the port has asked Tellurian to provide a $1 million letter of credit associated with the limited notice to proceed. The full notice to proceed requires a larger letter of credit. This just protects the port in the event that they would choose not to go forward, and then we could use some of that letter of credit or all of it if it were necessary to remove whatever it is that they put on the site that we would need to have removed. But I can say for the most part, the work that they're doing are things that need to be done anyway. The building needs to be demolished, the pipe rack needs to be removed, so it's all going to benefit the port in the long run.
I make a motion to approve submission 2022-1015.
Mr. Darbone moves.
Second.
Second from Mr. Prudham. Any questions?
I have a question.
Ms. McClary?
So I understand the value of removing buildings or structures and pipe racks that are there. Does it also allow them to build on the site?
They're able to do foundational work and drive some piling. Heather, do you have any, or John? I'm not sure.
There's certain things that they can do under FERC regs prior to a full notice to proceed, and it's preliminary site work. I mean, it is the beginning of the construction of the facility. The lease itself allows them to do all the construction that they need to do. It's just for this time period where they're in this limited notice to proceed, where they'd like to do these preliminary activities prior to a full notice to proceed. We just wanted some security in case they don't go forward. So the lease allows them to construct anything they want to construct. We're just in this period now where we didn't have any letter of credit because they haven't issued their full notice to proceed to the EPC contractor. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
So it does, the short answer to that is it does allow them to construct.
What you're voting on tonight doesn't affect any of that. Their lease that they're in now allows them to construct. Does that make sense?
But I believe they're probably limited in their construction by FERC. Not our lease and not this amendment to that lease.
Thank you.
And this is a result of they haven't gone to their full final investment decision, right? They're
That's correct.
partially funded, so they're moving forward before they have complete funding in place.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
That's correct. But 30,000-foot view, it's great news for the project. They're moving forward.
Yeah.
We're excited about it.
Any other questions? No other questions. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Ayes have it, motion carried. Submission 2022-016, Mr. Self.
A board approval is sought to authorize the executive director to negotiate and execute any and all documents deemed necessary to acquire title to approximately 69 acres of land located on Elliott Road, Lake Charles, Louisiana, from the Morin family, and to amend the capital budget to provide for such expenditure of port funds. In late 2020, the Morin family approached the port about acquiring their 69 acres, which is directly adjacent to about 230 acres that we already own. At the time, the port did an appraisal. Since then, the Morins have done their own appraisal, and the port is proposing acquiring the site at $2 million for the 69 acres for $2,075,000.
I would, Mr. Chairman, I would move that, that we approve submission, where are we? Submission 2022-016.
Ms. McClary moves approval.
16.
Mr. Dixon, second. Any questions?
Well, what's the explanation for the difference in the appraisals?
The earlier appraisal was based upon agricultural uses. The one that the Morans provided was more industrial.
And apparently y'all are satisfied that
Yes.
industrial is a more appropriate basis.
Yes.
Anything else? Any other questions?
Not really.
No other questions. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Ayes have it, motion carried. Submission 2022-017.
Approval of the responses to Louisiana compliance questionnaire is required by law. We're requesting approval for that. This is standard as part of our audit each year. It addresses questions like the profile of our agency. Did we follow the state bid law? Did we follow the open meetings law? Do we maintain our accounting records in accordance with state law? Things such as that. We provided our responses, and it's required that we submit it to you to review those responses and approve.
Did we do all those things?
Yes, sir. We did all the ones that relate to us. So there's some that relate to, educational entities and things like that that we don't respond to.
I make a motion, we approve them signing up for the Louisiana questionnaire, 2022-017.
Mr. Dixon moves. Mr. Guidry, second. Any discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Ayes have it, motion carried. Briefing notes, financial briefing note, February 2022.
Yeah, we're very excited. Cameron and his wife had a new baby on Thursday. Houston Scott Landry. Healthy baby, healthy mom, and they're at home. So I'm going to do the financials. It's been a while. So be easy on me. Operating revenues for the month for February 28, 2022 were $3.2 million, resulting in about a $700,000 favorable variance. The favorable variance was due to Bayrite, due to timing on the handling of Bayrite, due to timing on the handling of petroleum coke. And an additional thing that's impacting us in 2022 is GASB 87. GASB 87 requires that we calculate the present value of all the future lease payments on long-term leases that we have and book them as an asset. So that's impacting and we'll discuss that a little bit more, or you'll see the impact a little bit more significantly when we talk about the balance sheet. Operating expenses for the month prior to depreciation were $2.4 million, resulting in a $200,000 unfavorable variance. And the reason it's unfavorable is we just handled more tonnage than we had budgeted, petcoke and Bayrite. Non-operating revenue and expenses for the month were $300,000, resulting in a $100,000 favorable budget to actual variance, and that's due primarily to the payment that we received from Entergy for the shore power project. We received that during the month of February. Earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization were $800,000, and we generated about $1 million during the month of cash flow. Going on to the balance sheet, unrestricted cash and investments decreased $4.3 million as of the end of February. The decrease is due primarily to a lot of the hurricane-related projects that we had, the payment of our insurance premiums for 2022, and our payment for the public-private partnership that we have for the Calcasieu Ship Channel. Restricted cash and investments increased about $1 million, and that's due to the fact that we've collected some funds from some of the entities on the P3. Trade accounts receivable, and this is where you're going to see the biggest impact of GASB 87. Trade accounts receivable increased to $179 million as of February 28, 2022. And again, it's just due to GASB. It's calculating the present value of all future lease payments and discounting that back to the current year. true trade accounts receivable of our total, if you look at the balance sheet, our trade accounts receivable are $196 million in total. $179 million of that, or let me just say this, $179 million increase relates to GASB 87. Of the $196 million in total trade accounts receivable, $19.4 million are true trade accounts receivable, like that you see on a day-to-day basis. Government receivable increased $1.6 million, and that's due to the funds we're anticipating for the Port Priority Program on some of the capital projects. Fixed assets increased $1.6 million, and that's just due to the multiple hurricane-related projects we have ongoing. Construction in progress increased $5.6 million, again, due to a lot of the capital projects that we have ongoing, primarily the Berth 2 and 3 project, the purchase of the new ship unloader at BT1, and Transit Shed 16 and 17 roof repairs. Current liabilities increased $1.4 million, and that's due to the fact that as we collect the monies from the P3 from the other entities, we have to record it as a liability until we pay it out to the Corps of Engineers. Long-term debt decreased $1.2 million, and that's due to the principal and interest payment we made in January on our bonds outstanding. I'll try to answer any questions you may have.
I've got a question in regard to that GASB 87 requirement.
Sure.
To do the present value of these long-term leases. If you put it on the financials, what happens in 90 days? Because typically after 90 days, anything that's not collected becomes a bad debt. So how do they treat, if you have to treat it as an accounts receivable, what do you do in 90 days from that?
It's adjusted every month. That GASB 87 there's a monthly entry that we book every single month, adjusting it. And so if there's a bad accounts receivable, it'll get booked as an allowance for doubtful accounts and be adjusted through the accounts receivable.
Because you're actually booking receivables from 20 years out, 30 years out.
And more, 30 years.
More.
I mean,
Right.
you're talking about booking receivables for a lease that goes out 60 years. You're talking about going out to 2080. I mean, it's a GASB. We comply with GASB, and not a fan of it, but it is what it is. But we adjust it monthly.
So there'll be some dramatic adjustments in the financials going forward, taking it back off because it's theoretically not being collected, it's being pushed down the road.
I mean, I guess you have to give me an example. I mean, most long-term leases, there aren't many long-term leases that were, when you say aren't being collected, give me.
Well, I mean, it's an accounts receivable, so it's going to get beyond that 90-day ledger as far as collecting it if you put it all on the books at one time. Maybe I'm misunderstanding the procedure that's used in this.
I mean, it's basically looking at what the rents are for those sites, what their monthly rent is, and annual rent in that case, and discounting it back to the current day. I wouldn't anticipate wild fluctuations in the receivable, unless there's some one-off events. I mean, it's going to fluctuate every month, but I wouldn't anticipate massive fluctuations in the $196 million.
Currently, though, Rick, we're only booking the receivables that are due this month on those long-term leases, the way it's done right now.
That's correct.
So when you put it all onto the balance sheet at one pop as being a receivable, is it a current receivable?
Yeah, it is booked as trade accounts receivable. I'd have to check to see what portion is long-term or non-current and what portion is current. One thing that will impact it, and which would be a good thing for us, as we attract new tenants or new customers, and it's a 20-year lease, you're going to see a big increase in the receivable because we'll be required to book the present value of all the future rent payments. That will be an increase. That would be a pretty big, a positive fluctuation. I don't know if I answered your question or not.
I guess I'm just having a difficult time understanding how it's funny money. Because it's gonna show like a big receivable because you're booking these
I mean, we have a
30
long-term,
years out, and right
I'm not
now,
gonna
we're only dealing with what's due this month.
yeah, I'm not gonna defend the GASB for what they did. I can just tell you what, I mean, I don't necessarily agree with the way it's being done at all, and I don't, honestly haven't met anybody that does agree. But what they do require is, you've got a long-term lease with, say, Pinnacle, and it's a 30-year lease or whatever, however many years. Let's say they pay $1 million a year. You just do the math, do a present value calculation, you got to book the receivable.
And I guess what I was asking on, in your receivables, after 90 days, you start treating them as, taking them off because they're basically a questionable receivable. So when this big adjustment gets 90 days out, what is the adjustment, or how's that going to get treated?
You know, a 90-day receivable is not going to be a big fluctuation. If we say, let's say we have a big receivable booked for GASB 87 for Pinnacle, and Pinnacle goes bankrupt, you're going to see a big fluctuation then. But that's a one-off event. Other than, you know, if you're talking about 1 month's receivable is 90 days past due, that's really not going to wildly fluctuate the balance sheet.
One question, Mr. President. Ricky, how do you determine the discount rate on, is it
Jared,
varies?
is it 3%? We used a 3% discount rate.
And why 3%?
That's what we agreed to with the auditor, is this set up with market conditions and everything, 3% was pretty good.
Including inflation?
That's pretty good for right now.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay,
I have a question. Usually Cameron gives us a FEMA update. Is
I'll
that
take care of it.
correct? You're going to do that, John? Okay.
I just got this, and they just distributed it, but I do want to share some good news. We had a great meeting with some staff from Congressman Higgins. Elizabeth McLaughlin from Congressman Higgins' office joined the meeting. It was GOSEP. We had representatives from FEMA, Chuck Cleckley with the PCAR group, and then we had some folks that joined remotely, virtually. It was a great meeting. We worked through 3 projects, very significant projects. At our last board meeting, I think we'd only collected about 1.2 million from FEMA. Since then, I think the number is 4.7 million. Things have gone really well. It was a great meeting. We worked through some significant issues on some of the projects, and hopefully we'll get things moving a little bit better through the FEMA process. And they did a tour. We took them out to City Docks. But prior to that, they had not been there on site. I think they looked at one building in person. Aside from that, they had not been at City Docks. But a good meeting, very positive, and collections have improved.
That's good news.
okay. I guess, are you going to do Cameron's administration and security?
Yeah, it was all about the FEMA meeting.
Okay. Navigation, Channing?
Thank you. The Lake Charles Maritime Industry has started its annual effort to get adequate funding for the Calcasieu Ship Channel. This year is a lot different than it has been in the past. Normally, we're working on 1 year, sometimes 2. This year, we're working on 3 years. We're working on the budget for FY22, which just recently got passed about 5 months late. In that budget, we were seeking $35.5 million in O&M and $9 million in construction. We got $9 million in construction. We got $20 million in O&M. So now the effort is to get the Corps to allocate some of the discretionary funds that Congress gave to them, to this channel, so we can get up close to that 35.55 million that we need to do the job this year. Just before I came into this meeting, Picard sent out a mailing, an email, advising everyone that the FY23 budget had been released by the President. This budget is $5.8 trillion. Of all that money, which I cannot comprehend, the Calgary Ship Channel received $28.2 million. We were looking for $55 million, $54 million. Between my eyes and my handwriting, it's $54 million in O&M and $19.5 million in construction. We got $28.2 in O&M, no construction money, which is a big setback. So we're going to have to work on that, because the construction money is what we're using to rebuild all these disposal sites. So when the Corps dredges the channel, they can have a place to put the mud. Finally, we're working on the FY24 budget. We're trying to follow the budget process that the Corps is going through, which is to talk to the district, the division, Washington. We had our meeting with the district last week. Colonel Murphy was very generous with his time. We were scheduled for an hour. He gave us 2 hours. We talked about what was needed for all 3 years. We're looking for $45 million in O&M in FY24 and $9 million in construction funds. It remains to be seen what we're going to get out of that. That's all I wanted to report as an update. If there's any questions on my report or either my written or my verbal report, I'll be happy to answer.
Ms. McLaren?
So when is the next Begging for Bucks tour, or?
This is it right now.
Right now. Are you able to go to Washington to do that this year?
I'll let you know when we try and get the appointments for that.
Okay.
But we had no trouble getting into the Corps of Engineers in New Orleans, so that was fine. Whether or not there's going to be an issue getting to D.C., I don't know yet. And we've got our request in for the division, and nobody has told us yet we can't come. We're just working on trying to figure out dates.
So you're working on not a virtual meeting, but a
That's correct.
physical meeting with our
Unless they
Congress.
tell me it's got to be virtual, and then we'll do it that way.
But that would be with all of the delegation, our congressional delegation?
Usually, the congressional delegation is not present. It'll be representatives from the industry that'll be up in Vicksburg with us, talking to General Holland and her staff. Thank you.
No other questions? Operations, Todd?
Yes, sir. Recently at City Docks, we had another plywood shipment that came into the City Docks. It was about 21,000 cubic meters. A hydrate vessel and barge discharge is about 30,000 tons. We had a large cargo transfer, liquids cargo transfer. It was 21,000 tons. It was here for about 8 days, so it was really good revenue. And we did a sodium hydrosulfate vessel. It's about 6,400 tons. Coming up, we've got 2 lumber shipments. It's about 45,000 cubic meters, 3,000 tons of hydrate, and a 10,000 hydrosulfide shipment. We're also, Gulfstream's receiving structural steel for 3 shipments to go to Israel. And at BT1 recently, we've handled about 12,000 tons of calcine, about 125,000 tons of raw coke, and 25,000 tons of rutile. On the schedule now at BT1, we've got 50,000 tons of petroleum coke and another 25,000 tons of rutile. And there's also about 90,000 tons of limestone on the books for port aggregate at BT4. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions? Okay, thank you. Cargo Trade Development, Terrence.
Yes, Mr. President. We've been in contact with a offshore wind development company based out of Germany. They're currently the #2 developer in the world. Last week, we had a conference call on Monday, and they expect to spend about $57 billion between now and 2030. And they have agreed to come visit us mid-April to early May. So we're excited about that. This week, we're hosting the 2022 Rice Leadership Program Group. It's a 10-member group from 5 different states, and they're interested in rice milling, production, and export and operations, and they come visit us for a tour. Next week, we'll be attending the first annual Project and Breakbulk Conference in Houston, Texas. And we currently have a USDA contract out for bid. It goes in Thursday. It's about 8,000 tons of cargo total with about 7,500 tons of rice. And we'll be in contact with the stevedores, hoping to get a competitive bid from ocean carriers. And that's my report. I'll answer any questions if you have any.
Any questions? Thank you, Terrence. Engineering, maintenance, Nick.
Yes, sir, thank you. I'll actually go over the CSRS update if you would like for the FEMA, since Cameron's not here. Not much has changed on the cover sheet, but if we go to I guess it's the 3rd page, we start talking about the 2nd disaster and 3rd disaster. I just wanted a quick update there. Those have increased a little bit, and they are obligated now. The cost share on these has actually increased as well. They've moved up from 75% to 90%. So that was a blanket approval for all other disasters. Previously, Laura was the only one that was at 90%. So we'll see a little bit more funding on those 2 smaller ones. Let's see. Then I'm going to take you to the 4th page, I think it is, that talks about GOSEP. This is a new page we added this month. It's says Louisiana GOSEP at the top. So this is where we're always talking about what's obligated and what's been received. So this is a great summary that Glenn put together. These are projects that have already been approved by FEMA and now sent on to the GOSEP. We're sitting at 26 projects that have been submitted. We've already gotten 13.3 obligated. And then, as Mr. Ricky pointed out, we've now are up to $4.5 million in paid. And the reason for that increase, so I think it was on Friday, we received a little over $1 million each for both of our ship loaders that we've put on order. That covers our first down payment on those 2 ship loaders. So we're starting to see the money roll in, and now that those ship loaders are obligated, as we continue to make payments on those as we progress through the construction, we'll automatically be able to submit those and be reimbursed much quicker.
And I think that's an important point, too. What Nick said is that a lot of the money that is sitting in federal obligated at GOSEP is available to us once we expend the money. So we can't just say, GOSEP, send me the money. It's a cost reimbursement.
Right.
We're not necessarily waiting on GOSEP for that entire amount. I just wanted to point that out. And I wanted to thank Elizabeth for joining us at that meeting, because I think it was a great help having Higgins and his staff here.
Just to add, that meeting was just a little over a week ago, and one of the 3 projects that we were having issues with has now been basically resolved, and it's working its way through the approval process. So we're hoping we can add that to the list by the next meeting, which will be about another $8 million, which after insurance deductions will add about $2 million to our obligated. But that will be a cost reimbursement project. So that's for Shed 7. So we actually get reimbursed for what we spend on that one, minus our insurance, of course. So good meeting. And I'll be glad to answer any other questions.
Any questions? Thank you, Nick. Anything on the lobbyist reports? Okay. No other reports. I'll entertain a motion for executive session.
So moved.
Mr. Prudhomme moves. Mr. Darbone second. Any discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Ayes have it. We'll be going into executive session.